Well, g'day, and welcome again to Future of Hospitality Daily Tips. Um, my name's David Carruthers, and I set up this Future of Hospitality initiative to help hospitality business leaders survive and thrive in challenging times, and to co-create the future of the hospitality industry that we want, rather than the one we get given. So anyway, I'm in the UK, so g'day to all my Aussie mates, and contacts and connections and network and hospitality business leaders who are maybe watching this for the first time. So you'll see a nice Henry Moore sculpture behind me, and the 13th century, I think it's 13th century Dartington Hall somewhere behind me as well. I'm currently in the UK, and I've just started studying a one-year master's in regenerative economics. That's my definition of masochism. But the Future of Hospitality is an initiative that I am completely committed to really trying to share IP, share intellectual property, share strategies that people can put into place in their businesses, encourage and inspire strategic conversations that may well get you through tough times, may well even help you thrive in tough times, turning challenges into opportunities, which is really where success comes from. Taking challenges that are present, taking the situation that we're dealing with at the moment, making the best of it, and putting strategies in place that actually take us forward. So that's really what I'm about. Today, or this week, I'm talking about real estate and reviewing your what I'm calling real estate options. So most of you are renting premises. Most of you are your companies that you work for. If you're a manager or an area manager, you might be renting premises. Now, I think the stats are at the moment that something like 40% of hospitality businesses haven't paid their full rent or no rent in the last 3 to 6 months. So that sort of presents some challenges in terms of landlords wanting to carry on with certain businesses as tenants. And whilst there are ways to improve profitability, improve revenue, and really grow the business, even in difficult times, even when prices are rising, and even when customers are reducing their frequency, current customers are reducing their frequency of visit and their average spend, which impacts overall revenue, there are ways that these things can be grown. And we're not talking about that today. I'm talking about the ways we can use real estate. Yesterday, I talked about how we could look at alternative products at a strategic level. So if we had a cafe, how we might add on some restaurant sessions. If we had a cafe, how we might create a function space and offer functions and events. And I also looked at the reverse of that. So if you've got a restaurant, maybe you can bring in some cafe sessions on weekend brunches, for instance. So lots of ways that we can sort of look at changing the product mix at a strategic level. We're not talking about menu items and drink lists and stuff like that. We're talking about product at a strategic level. So that was yesterday. Today, what I want to throw into the mix, and look, none of these daily tips are things that every business that may be listening or tuning in or watching the recording later are going to be able to do. These are tactical tips, if you like, that fit within a broad strategy that tends to come out of the weekly newsletters, which tend to come out of the monthly briefings that I'm doing. So today's tip is around looking at if you're struggling with cash flow and you're struggling with profitability, and you've got rent liabilities that you're not sure are going to be met because of the level of trade you've got. If you're not confident that you can build your profitability in the next 3 months, in the next 90 to 100 days, if you don't think you can improve them, and I suggest that you might be able to, but not in all cases, but in most. If you don't think you're going to be able to do that, then one of the ways to look at the problem is, how do you reduce your rent? Well, of course, you could go and have a conversation with your friendly landlord and explain the situation to them. And in some cases, maybe 0.5% of cases, they'll actually offer to reduce your rent. Probably not on a permanent basis, but maybe on a temporary basis, because they're more interested in you being a long-term tenant paying rent than you going bust and not having anybody in there for a while. Now, that's not going to apply to many situations, okay? But one of the things you can do is, and you would need the agreement of your landlord to make this happen. But one of the things you can do is to find another business that might want to use some of your space. Now, if you're a single room venue and you only seat maybe 40 or 50 people, say you're a cafe in a shop premise that's only got one room, then this isn't necessarily going to be useful to you. But if you're in a big venue that's got multiple rooms and you're just not using them all, or most of them aren't being used anywhere near an optimal level, then what you might want to consider doing is rationalizing down the space that you're using, the real estate, the square meters that you're actually using, and end up in a situation where you've got a busier vibe in a smaller space, and possibly you've got somebody renting out another space that you use. Now, I'm not going to prescribe what you could put into those spaces, but there have been situations in real life where people have put anything from a barber's shop to a charity shop to a food store into the space that they wish to let out. And you would collect rent on this, right? It would be a sublet agreement. You might do it for 6 months or a year, or you might be able to do it for longer. It would depend on your landlord, and you'd need to get their approval in most cases to do this. And often it works best if that business you're subletting to has external access to the space. So this is going to be mainly for bigger venues or venues that have got multiple rooms, who are predicting and forecasting that they're going to go into a quieter time over the next possibly 6 or 12 months, and might want to consider doing this to mitigate the rent risk, to mitigate the rent liability. And ultimately, if you're a business owner, you've probably signed a guarantee, and you are the guarantor for the rent. And part of that guarantee is you've probably signed away your home, your house, other assets. You may have a business loan with a bank, and that loan may have your house on the line. There's just so many situations that I'm not going to go through them all. The purpose of this daily tip, and I'm going to end it in a minute, is really just to get your brain thinking. If you've got a multiple room venue and you're predicting that you're going to struggle to pay your rent over the next 6 to 12 months, or you may even be one of the 40% of hospitality businesses that haven't paid their full rent or any rent in the last 3 to 6 months, then you might want to consider finding a way to bring another business in that would contribute to your overall rent through a form of subletting agreement that you would need to get permission from your landlord to do. But it could actually be a really good way to reduce the cost of your rent over the next 6 to 12 months. Now, in the UK in particular, where the cost of energy over the coming winter is likely to result, lots of businesses have already said this, lots of pubs particularly have already come out and said they're probably going to close their doors this winter because the energy costs are going to be too much. They're going to be prohibitive in terms of trading and making a profit. It's going to be cheaper to close their doors and pay the rent and not trade than it is to actually open their doors and try and pay the energy bills that are going to be associated with trading through winter. So these are just, all these daily tips are just, they're really prompts to get you to think about the way you can do things. You can do things a little bit differently over the next probably 6 to 12 months, but who knows? It may be the next 2 or 3 years. Yeah. It ain't going to be what the governors of the reserve banks are saying, either the Bank of England in the UK, the Federal Reserve in the US, or the RBA in Australia, where they're missing the inflation forecasts by miles, and inflation's rapidly heading into high double digits. And they're revising their forecasts every 2 or 3 weeks now. But they're consistently saying that in a year, it'll all be okay. Don't worry about it in a year because it's all going to be okay. Well, if you want to trust the governors of the central banks, then if that's how you want to forecast your business, if that's how you want to develop your strategy, then you can choose to do that. What I'm recommending to people is that they take a more open view of the situation and the challenges, and they try and read through some of the bullshit that's been pushed out through the news that everything's going to be okay in 12 months. And I really hope it is. I sincerely hope that in 6 to 12 months, the world has come back to normal, and inflation isn't at 18 or 20%, which it probably will be in the UK by the end of this year, and it will certainly be 10% plus in Australia by the end of the year. So that's it, really. That's my daily tip for today, brought to you from sunny Devon, and this is a Henry Moore sculpture behind me, and a 13th century home to the institution that I'm in at the moment, doing my Masters of Regenerative Economics. And that's it. I love you and leave you. I hope what I've brought to you today gets you thinking about the way you can adapt your business in tough times. Thanks a lot, guys.